Okay, everybody, welcome back. We're live right now, but we have around 4 minutes till 10 a.m. class time. So I guess just good to see you guys. I hope you're having a good morning and had a nice weekend. And yeah, just hang in there, hang tight. About 4 minutes, we'll get started. If you're here, you can always feel free to say hi anytime. And I hope you guys are doing well. Hey, Ketan, Leo, Sophia, welcome back, everybody. Hope you guys had a nice weekend. Kenny, Gloria, Mia. Hey there, how's it going, guys? Janice, Brittany, Paula, welcome everyone. Thank you guys for your early arrival. Danielle, Naaman, always good to be with you guys. Hey, Allison, Celine. Hey, Brandon, Angel, welcome everyone. I got the first dose of the whole corona vaccine on Saturday. It's pretty chill, very easy, no side effects to me anyway. Pfizer vaccine, so I'm glad that's over with. First dose anyway. Got to go back for part 2 on April 3rd. But yeah, it's like a race to get everyone vaccinated. And at least I see that the pace is picking up, so that's good news for everybody. Hi, Jerry, and everybody here. Welcome back. Hi, Sheely, Sebastian. Okay, cool. Yeah, you'll do fine with it, Brandon, I'm sure. There's just a little soreness in the arm, but that is already gone. Oh, Moderna this morning, nice. I had a friend that did the Moderna not this morning, but like a week ago. He's doing good. Hi, Alexis, Stephanie, everybody here. Just another minute or so, then we'll be good to go. Cool. Hey, Kate. Jocelyn, welcome back. Kobe, Kevin, everyone, welcome here. Okay, so good morning. It's 10 a.m. now, so let's just get things rolling. Good to see everybody, and I hope you had a great weekend. Let me just make sure we're all on the same page with a couple of basic things. I think on, was it Thursday or Friday last week, I sent the midterm study guide. Can you guys just confirm that you've been able to open that and that you have it? I sent a couple of different messages over the weekend, so just want to kind of clarify the content of each one and make sure we all know about it. So you can tell me that you got the study guide, right? Okay, good, thank you. So if you haven't yet had a chance to go back and look, Definitely just check our titanium announcements in this class. I think they're also forwarded to your school email account. That's just a big study guide that we're going to use on Thursday, the next class period, to go into our review session. And then next Tuesday, a week from today, is when you have your midterm exam. So that list of 43, I think, questions, I'm going to select about 10 or 11 items off of that list to put on the test itself. But I don't know yet, and of course none of you know yet, which ones that I'll select. So you want to be prepared to answer as many of them as you can. So for your best interests, I would say come to the review session for sure. Make sure to take some good notes and come prepared with questions on whatever topics on that list that you think you'd like to review. And we'll help each other as a class, guided by me and your classmates to review as many of those topics as we can on Thursday, and then next Tuesday you'll be delivered the exam. When I send the exam on Tuesday next week, that's Tuesday the 23rd, you're going to just be delivered the exam through Titanium just prior to class time. So like maybe 5 minutes or so before 10 a.m., you'll receive it in your inbox. And then you'll have the window of time until class expires to send me back your written answers. They can be handwritten, they can be typed. But yeah, you just forward me back your answers before 11:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You should send it to me to my email as an attached document, and then you'll be done with your midterm. We'll have one more lecture on Thursday next week before we go away for spring break. And then we'll come back from spring break and we have the second half of the class, or not quite the full second half, but it's like 9 weeks and then another 6. So Leo, as I was saying, there's going to be a selection of about 10 or 11 questions on that day, and I'm going to have you answer 7 or 8 of them. Okay, so like there'll be a little bit of choice on your behalf as to which ones to answer, but you won't be allowed to just choose from any of them on the whole list. I'll create a curated list of I'll narrow the questions down to again, I say 10 or 11. And then your task will be to answer 7 or 8 of those that I select. Okay, so that's the basic idea. Okay, so if that's all clear, hopefully we're all on the same page. So just reminding you again one more time the schedule. Today we're finishing our last lecture on the trolley problem. Then Thursday, next class, we're doing review session. Tuesday next week, we'll take the midterm exam. Thursday next week, we have one lecture before we head away for spring break. Okay, also I sent some videos on Sunday night about the trolley problem, so if you want to watch those to gain a little bit more in-depth understanding and to kind of deepen your knowledge about the paper and its topics, you can do that. There's one that's a lecture from Tamar Gendler at Yale University on the trolley problem. She's actually one of the 3 editors of this book, our class textbook, Tamar Gendler. She's the first name mentioned on the cover. So you can see her kind of talking about the trolley problem and also ethical theory in the video that I gave you a YouTube link for on Sunday night. So if you want to look at that, there's also a short TED Talk that I also attached to the same message, which kind of, in a more brief way, summarizes basic ideas in the trolley problem. And then the first essays, those have been graded as of last night. So Angel, you're asking, is there any chance you can record the Zoom session? Well, there's no Zoom session. I mean, but the YouTube lectures are all recorded. Are we all clear on that, Angel? So are you asking about the review session that will occur on Thursday? It's going to be held on YouTube just like this, and just like this, the video of that lecture will remain online. Have you been able to go back and watch previous lectures in this class? Just know, Angel, that these live videos they don't disappear after they are recorded. They stay up on the channel. So right now you can look at any of our other lectures throughout the whole semester. And for the YouTube live session on Thursday, just like all the others, it'll be recorded and filed in the archive so you can watch it for your own review after the fact. Does that make sense, Angel? Just hopefully I kind of don't want to leave you hanging with your question, but basically yes is the answer, but it's not Zoom, it's YouTube. Okay, my video was lagging, and yes, I saw the past YouTube recording. Okay, yeah, good, not to worry. But yes, it's going to be recorded, and it'll stay on the channel. Okay, so good question. Let's see, anything else for now? Oh yeah, I was just saying I finished the grading of the first essay. So I did that last night. I mean, I worked on it all throughout the weekend, and I needed an extra day pretty much, but as of last night, they're done. So I think I sent a message yesterday, which said, feel free to now inquire for your grade. The way I like to release grades is in a personalized individual email interaction. So when you're ready, just send me an email and ask for your grade on the first essay. And if you want your grade or comments, I'll send you back your grade or any comments about your paper, and then you'll know how you did on the first paper. Only thing I would ask is that you give me a window of time, as much as 48 hours, to get a response, just because I have a lot of other classes too, and I'm constantly replying to a bunch of emails. So not to worry, but just if you could give me that little buffer of time, then for sure I'll be able to reply to you within the window mentioned there. So if you sent me a message already requesting a grade, not to worry, you'll get your response and your answer no later than 48 hours from the day and time that you posted it, that you sent me your inquiry. Okay, so just a reminder again, you have to come to me for your grades and scores. I'm happy to report them back to you, but just whenever you send me the email, then you'll be in the queue and I'll get you your response. Certainly before the midterm and before the test next week, but throughout the week I'll be replying to questions on grades. Okay, so then I guess we're all up to speed on those matters just having to do with the schedule and dates. So let's continue then and finish up this trolley problem essay. That's our goal today. So one more look at the trolley problem from this author, Judith Thompson. Judith Thompson, 1985 paper called The Trolley Problem. Okay, and Judith Thompson, her lifetime from 1929 until just November, she died in 2020. Okay, so the trolley problem. As I was explaining last time, this is an essay which explores puzzling and confused intuitions that everyday people seem to have about cases involving killing as opposed to letting die. The basic overall concept here is that when an audience is presented with these two scenarios, driver and transplant, they react differently to the two examples, essentially saying that the action that the surgeon would take of killing one to save 5 would be wrong. Taking one person's organs to save 5 lives by means of transplanting them into their bodies. That everyone seems to agree is wrong and it's not morally permitted. But when the driver case is given, suppose there was a driver of a trolley on a path to hit 5 people on the track, and he has a switch that can divert it to the other stretch where there's one person. Suppose this trolley driver switches the switch. Everybody thinks that's not wrong. So trolley driver switches to one person and kills 1 instead of 5. Everyone says not wrong. Transplant surgeon kills 1, takes the organs to save 5. Everyone says that is wrong. So the first version of our trolley problem question is, why do most people say that the action of the driver is okay, but not the action of the surgeon? Well, as we were covering last time, one attempt to solve this problem is to rely on the solution given by a previous author named Philippa Foot. Now, what did Philippa Foot say was the right solution to the problem of the trolley problem? She said it involves the consideration of 2 moral principles that she thinks we can all accept. One of them is that it is worse to kill 5 than to kill 1. The other is that it is worse to kill 1 than to let 5 die. Now, this would appear to solve the problem, or at least initially, because if you consider the case of driver, the driver's case is a choice between killing 5 if he continues on his path, or instead, if he switches the track, just killing 1. So what Foot believed is that when everyone thinks that that's not wrong, the reason they say it is because it would be even worse if he killed a bigger number. So if the only choice is between killing more and killing less, it's worse to kill more. So he should try to kill less with the trolley. But on the other hand, when we consider the case of transplant, the surgeon's choice is not kill 5 or kill 1. Because if the 5 people die due to their organ failure, that's not the doctor that killed them. So the doctor appears to have this choice instead. Kill 1 innocent person, taking the person's organs to save 5 lives, or don't do that. And if you don't do that, 5 die, but not at your hand and not through your actions. So he looks to be facing the choice, kill 1 or just let 5 die from whatever they already had going on. And since it's worse to kill 1 than to remain uninvolved in a situation where you could have saved lives, then that would be a worse thing to do, and so he shouldn't do it. Does this solve the problem? Well, it looks like it, but then Thompson says not so fast, because, according to her, the problem just reestablishes if we make a slight edit to that trolley scenario of trolley driver. So that's where we got to the whole bystander at the switch example. Okay, so I think we're getting close to where we left off last time. And let me just remind you then about the whole bystander at the switch example. So this is like the updated version of trolley driver that Thompson says will revive the problem even in light of Foote's solution. So bystander at the switch. Trolley going forward, driver in the trolley, passed out, X'd out eyes, they're unconscious. Trolley's going straight ahead. Here's 5 people that it would hit. Okay, we'll hit these people on the path in the way of the trolley. But there's the fork in the trolley, and on that side, 1 person is positioned. So the driver can't do anything because he's not conscious right now. But there's a bystander over here that's just hanging out nearby, standing by. And they see that there's this remote switch which can achieve the same function of diverting the trolley's course to the other side of track. So the second example of bystander at the switch just makes this little edit that the person who could now affect the redirection of the trolley is not the driver themselves, but rather the bystander that's in a remote area. So the audience is asked again, what do you think? Would it be wrong or not if the bystander flips the switch? And the audience's overwhelming reaction, as you guys would actually see if you watch the video that I shared on Sunday night, the lecture at Yale, because there's a whole survey of a big audience with each scenario. What the audience says in overwhelming majority is that this is also not wrong for the bystander to flip this switch. But if that's the case, if that's the way audiences judge the case or the example, then we can no longer use Philippa Foote's solution. Because Foote said the difference in the reaction of the audience lies in the different choice situation facing the 2 characters in the scenarios. Whereas driver faces kill 5 or kill 1, surgeon faces kill 1 or let 5 die. But when bystander replaces the driver case, there's no longer that difference, because consider the choice of Mr. Bystander. If he gets involved touching the switch, he takes the action that would cause this 1 person's death, killing the 1. But if he does not touch the switch and stays uninvolved, he is in no way the killer of 5 people. It's the runaway trolley driven by this person that kills them. So it's like he could either kill 1 or let 5 die. But if he does the action that kills 1, everyone says it's okay. And they don't say that about transplant. So we're still left wondering what's the proper solution then? Because again, Foote's solution was only effective when we had a trolley scenario where the driver faces a different choice than the type of choice facing the surgeon in the other comparable example. So what's a different solution? Well, you say, Sebastian, maybe because the killing is more indirect. Perhaps that's one way to go and try and see it that way. Let me offer you this, Sebastian. And yeah, with the trolley, you're not like personally involved. You're not like, laying hands on this person like the surgeon would be cutting them up and all of that. So there's that one element of it for sure. But let me walk you through another attempted solution that Thompson suggests next, which has a little bit more, I think, appeal, but ultimately she's going to try and show that this one doesn't work either. And then after we show how the second attempt fails, we'll get to Thompson's own solution, which of course she thinks is the right one. So one more failed attempt, though, to solve the so-called trolley problem. And this next attempt she calls the Kantian solution. Okay, so we're going to go back and take a little tour through Kant and his ideas one more time, briefly. So what is the Kantian solution? The so-called, quote-unquote, Kantian style solution. Okay, so the Kantian solution is this idea that, well, before I just write it up there, I want you to think about it with me. Let's remember what Kant said. Kant said a lot of things about morality and ethics, but one basic idea of his that everybody knows about Kant is that he said there's this categorical imperative. You're supposed to utilize the categorical imperative to assign what your obligations are morally. What the moral law requires you to do or not do can be discovered through reflection on the categorical imperative. And so the categorical imperative, according to Kant, can be specified in 2 different versions. Who can tell me or remember what is the second version of Mr. Kant's categorical imperative? So I'll give you some hints, but you should tell me the rest. It's something about how you should treat people or never treat people. So Kant, categorical imperative, version 2. Do not treat people how? If we can remember that, then that I can add to our discussion, and then that'll help us advance to the next point in this essay. So what did Kant say about how you are obligated to interact with other humans? So Kobe, never treat a human being as a means to an end. not use humans as a tool to manipulate towards a goal. That's exactly right. So yes, Kant says that you are supposed to never use the human beings as a means to an end, but treat humanity and human beings as though they are the end in themselves for the sake of which you are acting. So treat people as though they're goals instead of things to use to achieve goals. So now, remembering that that's what the categorical imperative says, version 2, could that serve as a solution to the trolley problem? Some think so, and here's how so. You can argue that in the case of bystander, the one victim is not used as a means. But in the case of transplant, the one victim is used as a means. And therefore, this is why people say that the transplant is wrong to do, but the bystander flipping the switch is not. Okay, so in bystander, that scenario, the one victim, so I'm talking about the one person on the other part of the track that would be hit if you hit the switch. The one victim is not used as a means to an end. But on the other hand, in quote unquote transplant, the one victim, the one guy that you would take his organs to save the other 5, is used as a means. And if this is the case, if this analysis is correct, then in that case, it would help to explain why people react differently to the cases. Maybe because people are intuiting that the victim in transplant is used as a means, and that's just wrong according to our common sense. But the one guy in the bystander case, although he will die by trolley, he's not actually used as a means in that example, and therefore we don't have the same sense that that's wrong to do. So let's try and explain why it is that some might argue that the victim of bystander, when the switch is flipped and the trolley goes at him, that's not really using it as a means, but in the other case it is. So Thompson suggests this as a little conceptual test of whether an interaction with someone uses that person as a means. So here's the test that she is offering to us. Ask yourself, would your action's goal still have been achieved if the interaction involving this other person were such that they disappeared right at the last moment as you're about to take the action? So I need you to imagine this. Do a little bit of mental gymnastics, okay? You're thinking outside the box now. I want you to imagine at the last moment, as like, say, the trolley is coming at the one person, you flip the switch, you're the bystander, you flip the switch, now the trolley's coming at them. Suppose that somehow like a miracle happens, and at the very last second, as the trolley's about to make impact, poof, they just disappear, vanish, like magic, off the track. Okay, so like, I don't know, God or something just literally teleports them off the track to like 10 feet off to the left, so they're just standing by on the side and now watching the trolley pass. Or another opportunity, trolley's coming, and like in one of those old Warner Brothers cartoons, the guy on the track, that's the one guy, slips down into like a Bugs Bunny rabbit hole, the trolley passes over his head, and he just watches it go beyond him. So I want you to just imagine that, guys, okay? Any scenario where somehow at the last second, the one person on the trolley pops off the trolley and they're not there at all, not present in the way of the trolley coming at. So if the one person on that side of the track were to somehow magically disappear at the last moment, would we still have saved the other 5 people's lives? Is this guy being on the track somehow necessary to saving those 5 lives? Or would it be even better if he wasn't there? And so, you know, like if he was somehow absent at the last second, would we still have reached our goal of averting the death of 5? Yes or no? That's just a yes or no. Does this guy being on the track have to happen for us to save 5 people? Or no? And if he somehow were able to get off the track at the last minute, then our action would have been capable of saving 5. That's right, guys, yes. If you can just picture what I'm trying to describe, there's no necessary reason why this guy has to be there in order to save the 5 lives. All you're really trying to do by hitting the switch is to cause the trolley to go away from them. It's not like you hope for it to hit anybody else. Quite the contrary. If the guy was not on the track, wouldn't that be so much better? Because then you would have saved 5 lives at no human cost. It would have been just a total rescue of all 5 lives, and no one would have been hit by the trolley on the opposite side. So, in a way, here's the thing. Although that guy is there, and you can foresee if you're the bystander that hitting the switch will cause the trolley to kill him, It's not really his death that you're intending or aiming at. All you're really trying to do is to redirect the trolley to somewhere less destructive. And though there's a person there, it's not like you would prefer him to be there or that he's essential to what you're trying to do to save the other 5 people. So it looks like although he's going to die by means of trolley when you hit the switch, his death is incidental to your life-saving attempt to prevent the death of these other 5 people. He's just in the wrong place at the wrong time, sort of, and his death is not something that you would prefer if you could avoid it, okay? Now, on the other hand, though, let's go into the transplant case once again. I want you to now imagine the same kind of thing happening with transplants. So you got the surgeon who's about to do this deed of literally killing the one person, taking their organs out. So he's like got the scalpel and all of that. And suppose that at the last moment, while he's preparing to do that, again, just pretend that abracadabra, the guy disappears off the operating table. So what? There's no longer this one person here. Now, if that was to happen before the guy could have started taking the organs and everything, well, if the one victim disappears at the point of action, would we still have been able to save the 5 lives in the transplant scenario? That's the question next. Can you understand my question? So suppose that the transplant victim, the one, was to somehow magically disappear and be absent from the situation. Obviously, yeah, you guys understand that in that case, we couldn't have saved those 5 lives. Why not? Well, obviously, because we wouldn't have had the organs that we need. So this guy, it seems, is definitively used as a means, because it's not like his death is non-essential in this example to saving 5 lives. If you're going to harvest his organs and take them to give to 5 people, then when he disappears, you no longer have the means, literally, for saving 5. So he's used as a means, no question about it, because if he wasn't there, nothing could have been done to save 5 lives. But in the bystander and in the driver case earlier, though someone gets hit by a trolley, it's not that you'd prefer it, and it's not that their death is something that is vital to the option of trying to prevent the trolley hitting 5, you see? So maybe that has explained it. One case, the victim's used as a means because their death is somehow an essential ingredient in saving 5 lives. In the other case, though a death unfortunately happens, it's not intended, and so much better would the whole case be if they weren't even there. But even though that looks like a fair solution and it has some like logical reasoning behind it, Thompson once again snatches victory out of the jaws of defeat or whatever it is and says, sorry, no, this is actually still not the right solution. And so she's next going to try and show us that although it's a noble attempt, that the Kantian solution also fails to solve this trolley problem. And that paves the way for her to finally say after that why her solution is the right one and what it is. So next is the explanation as to why this doesn't work. Why it does not work, according to Thompson, can be shown once we make yet another edit to the trolley scenario. Okay, so if we make a little alteration and edit to that trolley case again, we will see that the trolley problem has not yet been vanquished and it's still there. So that next case that we'll draw, it's called loop. Okay, so here's loop, a new trolley situation to contemplate. Okay, so loop. Well, let's get started with the basics. You've got a trolley with this unconscious driver at the wheel on a track. According to the description of the case, there's 5 people ahead on the track. And there's another direction of track over here. You've got this bystander who stands by near the remote switch that can divert the track to that direction. Now, in the earlier 2 trolley cases, whether it was driver or bystander, you have imagined that the tracks run in these different directions and that they never circle around and somehow connect. So that if the trolley goes in this direction, it kills one person, but then it just keeps going off in that direction, and these guys are safe. But what if it does form a loop? Okay, so we just now make this little adjustment. And another thing, how can I put this? There's a large gentleman here. On that part of the track, okay? So now, with loop being our new trolley scenario to consider, let's go through what would happen if this person does or does not hit the switch. So trolley's out of control, no brakes, going straight forward on this path. Say he doesn't hit the switch. Okay, well then this is what's going to happen. The trolley's going to plow into these 5 people and kill all of them. But the 5 bodies have enough mass, let's say, that their combined mass will prevent the continued forward motion of the trolley, and it will basically stop its continued momentum. So it will come to rest here, and it will not therefore be able to continue around the loop to kill the big guy from the other side. Okay, so basically if it hits these 5, it kills them, but then they block it from continuing on. On the other hand, say he hits the switch. So the trolley then goes up in this way. And if it goes in this way, it strikes and it kills the large gentleman. But because he's so large, his body will also have sufficient mass to block the trolley from continuing to travel along the track. So if it hits him, it kills him, but then it stops there and it doesn't continue around to kill the other 5 that are on the other part of the loop. Okay, so loop is our new trolley situation. Yet again, the crowd, the audience, is polled and surveyed, and they're asked, well, would it be wrong or not for the bystander to hit the switch here? And spoiler alert, but you can see if you watch the video that I sent, almost everybody again says, no, it's not wrong. So people don't seem to be fazed by this change to the case either. So in driver, nobody thought it was wrong to hit the switch. In bystander, very few people thought it was wrong to hit the switch. And even in loop, people don't really think that it's wrong to hit the switch, at least the majority, the vast majority. So then, if this is judged to be permissible, then that destroys the Kantian solution too. Because remember what Thompson said about the concept of using someone as a means. You're using someone as a means if the action which involves them would not be effective if they were to somehow disappear at the last moment. So in the other trolley examples, we said that if this guy disappears at the last moment, great, because the trolley just keeps going and it doesn't hit anybody. But now it's loop. And so go back into that same kind of mental scenario. Let's suppose this. He hits the switch, trolley going towards the 1, and then again, at the last moment, somehow poof, and he's gone from the track. Well, if this large guy disappears from the track in loop, then what would happen? That's a simple enough question, so let me know. Suppose that he hits switch, trolley goes this way, big man or whatever just disappears somehow. Then if that was to happen, what would go down from there? So he disappears just before the trolley hits him. Right, Kobe. I know that if he dies, the other are saved, but I'm asking a different question. I'm saying, what if he disappears before anything can hit him? If that were to happen, then there would no longer be this object blocking the path of the trolley. So it would just continue around the track, the loop, and it would just kill these guys from the opposite side. So now it does seem, that's right, Kobe, yes. So now it does seem that in a way, according to the description of when you use someone as a means, this guy is being used as a means. Because if he was not there, you wouldn't have the body that is necessary to block the continued path of the trolley, thus killing all of the others. So he's used as a means, and the guy in the transplant is used as a means also. But the audience doesn't seem to distinguish the two cases, or rather they do. They say that in the case of loop, this is an acceptable way of using someone as a means to save 5. But in transplant, it's not. So we're still fishing around for the solution. Hopefully you now can understand. Loop is a case that's just designed to show how Kantian solution fails. Because the Kantian solution relied on a distinction in the 2 examples, according to which one victim is used as a means and not the other. But now with loop replacing bystander, we've eliminated that distinction. In both cases, loop and transplant, the one victim is used as a means, and yet the audience feels that this is okay to do, and it's not okay to do what the surgeon would do. So we're still then going to have to find the right solution, but not to worry, I've kept you in suspense, or Thompson has for a while. And now she's finally prepared to hit us with what she thinks is the real correct solution to this trolley problem. So let me erase to create room for her statement of the solution. Okay, so here it is then, Thompson's own solution. So Thompson's solution to the trolley problem is this moral principle that's now going to be written. It's the principle that it is morally permissible to redirect a threat from a larger to a smaller group of people, as long as, and this is the key qualification, as long as it is the same threat that is being redirected. So let me write that and then explain. As long as it is the same threat, emphasis on same, that is being redirected. Okay, so let's think about how this principle effectively solves the trolley problem. So what it says there is that it's morally acceptable, it's okay to divert a threatening thing from one large group to another smaller group, but it has to be the same threat. So you're just basically funneling something that is already threatening into a less destructive outcome. But the important point is that it must remain the same threat, not the creation of a totally different threat for the smaller group to face than was faced by the larger group. So with that in mind, let's go back to some of these cases. In all the trolley examples that I've mentioned to you, whether it was driver, bystander, or the loop case, what is the thing that would be the threat to the lives of 5 people? So in the trolley examples, simply stated, just you can tell me in this chat, what would be the cause of death of 5 people in the trolley examples, in all of them? Something could kill these 5 people, and what would it specifically be? Death by what? For the 5. Death by trolley, exactly, yes. The trolley, the oncoming trolley is the imminent threat to their lives. That's the thing that's threatening their life. So, okay, if somebody hits a switch, whether it's the driver or some bystander, and it sends the trolley in a different area towards 1, now 1 person has a threat coming at them. No longer is it 5, it's 1. But what will the threat be to the 1 if the switch is flipped? What then causes the threat towards 1? Or what is the threat towards 1? What would be the cause of death for 1? Death by, you can tell me now again. So if no one touches, again, yes, it's trolley. So if no one touches the switch, trolley kills 5. If someone does touch the switch, the same trolley, this is key, same trolley would kill just 1. So what she thinks is the important bit here is that it's just the same trolley, and it's just going to hit a certain number of people. The only question is, how many will it hit? The 1 trolley could either hit 5 or it could hit 1. But we're talking about life and death here, and with death, more is worse, of course. More dead people is worse than less. So if we have 1 threatening thing, and the only remaining question is, how many people will it harm or kill? Most figure, according to these survey results, that if your action is intended to prevent that threatening thing from harming the maximum number and instead harming a minimum number, that doesn't seem to be wrong. All you're trying to do is cause the threat to affect fewer people. But now let's consider the other comparison of transplant. So in transplant scenario, what is the thing that is a threat to the life of 5 individuals? 5 people are at risk of death. What would be the cause of death for those 5? Death by what? In transplant. So switching examples for a moment, because this whole problem is about comparing the 2 cases and how audiences respond to them. So we said that in transplant cases, it is the same threat. Now in, trolley cases, it's the same threat. But in transplant case, organ failure is the threat to 5 lives. It's natural causes, right? Liver failure, heart failure, kidney failure, lung failure. So organ failure is the thing that's threatening their lives. Now, suppose this surgeon tries to intervene by taking the life of the 1 to save the other 5. If that happens, then 1 man or woman or whoever is at threat of death. But what would be the cause of death to the 1 in the transplant situation? That's the question. Death by what? To the one victim of transplant. What would that person be threatened by or die by? Yes, the homicidal doctor, Naaman. Yeah, that's correct. So it's not natural causes at all. It's a person coming at you with a scalpel or whatever tools and taking the organs out. So that's not a transfer of threat from one group to another. It's the establishment of a completely different and distinct threat for the one individual to face that is not at all the threat facing the five. The five are not threatened by possible death from homicidal doctor. They're threatened by death of organ failure. And so it's not transfer of one threat to another group. It is trying to prevent one threatening thing from harming one group by establishing an entirely different and separate threat for another individual to face instead. So that, according to Thompson, is where our intuitions are kicking in. It seems like most people overwhelmingly feel that if there's a threat already available that's going to be harming some number, any effort to divert it into a less destructive outcome is not necessarily wrong. On the other hand, though, it's not okay to try and prevent a threat from harming a big number by doing something totally different and threatening to a smaller number. So it's okay to transfer threats, but not to create new ones, basically. That's her way of reasoning about it. And I think it has some, decent common sense behind it. Like say there was a pilot piloting a plane, and it's a tragedy, but let's say the engine starts failing and there's no way to regain control. So this plane is in a nosedive, crashing to the ground. And let's say the only options that this pilot has left are where to crash the plane. Suppose that he doesn't redirect its downward path, and it's currently heading down into like Dodger Stadium with like 20,000 fans attending a game. So it would be a huge destructive loss of life. Well, he can't regain total control of the plane, but he has the ability to steer it over here towards the right a little. And suppose that that other area is like a big open field where it's not totally empty, but there's just a few dozen people over there playing, picnicking, whatever. So the question is, will he not switch the trajectory so that it lands in this big populated stadium, or will he switch it so that it just hits fewer and kills fewer? The same plane is going to hit and kill some number of people. But I would argue, and probably you would agree, that almost nobody would think, hey, it's wrong, it's immoral, this guy did something bad by trying to just cause the one plane to hit fewer. So diversion of threat seems to be morally permitted by most people's common sense intuitions about morality. It's not making a threat, it's trying to steer the threat of whatever origin into its least destructive potential outcome. So minimizing death toll, minimizing body count from one threat, why would that be wrong? But it's not okay to create a new threat. So that seems like it's a good viable solution, but there's just one little last extra clause that Thompson says that she wants to add at the very end. So this is the basic essence of the solution to the problem. But one last little twist, okay, one last little amendment at the bottom, okay, and this is what it is. So she says, it's okay to redirect a threat from bigger to a smaller group, but it has to be the same threat, and, second part, part two, second clause, and as long as the means of redirecting the threat do not violate anyone's important rights. Anyone's important rights. I'm trying to write that. It's a little bit low on the board, but hopefully it's easy enough to see. Okay, so what it says here, I'll read it so it's easy enough to understand. It is morally permissible to redirect a threat from a greater to a lesser number of people as long as it is the same threat that is being redirected. Okay, we covered that, but also, and as long as the means of redirecting the threat do not violate anyone's important rights. So why does she have to add this final little additional clause to make it a solution? Well, she says without this extra little bit at the bottom, there's the possibility of still giving counterexamples. And so she says it's only a perfect solution to the problem when we add this little extra piece of information. Why is it needed? Well, it's needed because of possible cases like the one that she describes next. So we have one more trolley case to consider. And this last case is going to show us, she says, why she had to sneak in this little extra amended clause to the solution. Okay, so one more trolley case to show why we need to add that last part. And so this trolley case, she gave it this name. It's not my language, and I don't think people should use words like this because it's insensitive to people's bodies, but the case is called Fat Man on the Bridge, or at least this is what she calls it. So I'm just going to label it like that because that's her usage. Okay, so let's go. Bridge case. Here's how it goes. You've got this trolley again. Going straight forward. Who's in it but a driver that's unconscious, so they can't do anything. But here's the way the case is described. We got 5 people again on the trolley ahead. Sorry, on the track ahead. Now, in this example, there's a little bit of a difference because now with this trolley example, there's no fork in the track. There's no like separate stretch. So it seems like there's no switch that you can hit that's going to take it in a different direction, and there's no brakes. So are these guys doomed? Seems like it, but wait, there's one thing that could be done. So there's actually a bridge in this example. And this bridge overlooks the trolley path that passes underneath. It's like a little walking footbridge. So you could walk up here, stand there, and just kind of watch the trolley go past you underneath. Suppose that on the bridge we have one person here, and then also another, I don't know, large gentleman also on the bridge here. So now, you can't hit a switch to stop this trolley from killing 5 people. But let's suppose that there's one possible action that could be done to prevent the 5 from getting hit by the trolley here and save their lives. But what do you think is the action being described in the example then? What's the life-saving, well, I don't know. Let's not say whether it's life-saving or not, but what's the action that prevents the greater loss of life in this example? So we can't say it's flipping a switch. Think through it though. Yeah, so pushing this guy, that's right, Kobe. Pushing the large guy down, he does that. If he does this, pushing him down, then he falls into the pathway of the oncoming trolley, and then he's killed by the trolley instead of them. His size is described as big or whatever in order to affect the outcome that it's sufficient in size to stop the path of the trolley from continuing, to basically blocks and provides a barrier so these guys don't get hit or harmed. Now, if I ask you this, would that be okay or not, morally? Do you think this is wrong or not wrong to push that guy so that the trolley hits him instead of 5? What do you think? Just give me your hot take. Wrong or not? It seems like almost everybody agrees that it's wrong. That's right, yes. So don't worry. No need to be shy about it. You're in good company because that's the overwhelming response of almost all in every audience, that it's wrong, and it's certainly wrong, okay? But if that's wrong, to push him and topple him in the way of the trolley, it actually causes a little bit of a complication for the original unamended solution of trolley problem that Thompson gave, unless we add that second clause. Because, okay, let's go through it. What will be the cause of death to 5 if nobody's pushed? Well, the cause of death would be death by trolley hitting them. Okay. Well, what would be the cause of death for 1 if this person does push him? Let's be clear about something. It's not the push and the fall that kills this guy, because the bridge is so short that you can easily survive the fall off of the bridge into the trolley path. So you got to imagine that he's pushed. Whoa, what happened? And then he gets killed and hit by the trolley like a second later. So it's death by trolley to 5 if no one pushes this guy, but it's death by trolley to 1 if you do push him. So it looks like it satisfies her original stated solution. You can divert a threat from bigger to smaller group as long as it's the same threat. And this is the same threat. But the reason that it's not okay is because of that second clause that she adds to fully spell out the whole solution. So that second part says, it's not just that it has to be the same threat. That's just one half of it. It has to be the same threat, but also it matters how you achieve the diversion of the threat. So what physical action is the means by which this guy is put into harm's way in the man on the bridge example? What action that is taken places him in the way of the trolley instead of 5? So that's my new question. What's the means, in other words, of diverting this threat from 5 to 1 in man on the bridge? It's getting pushed. That's right, Janice. It's literally placing hands on the guy and pushing him over. So it's a form of assault, right? You have every right not to be pushed just in general, but you certainly have right not to be forcefully pushed off a bridge into the way of a trolley. So we could argue that this is not an acceptable means of diverting the threat because it revolves around and relies on the act of pushing someone. And if you believe in rights at all, then I suppose you have to agree that we have a right not to be pushed into the pathway of an oncoming trolley against our will. So that, according to Thompson, is what makes this acceptable. Not that it's not the same threat, because it is, trolley or trolley, same threat. The reason that it's wrong is rather the way of diverting the threat. It's not okay to do it by means of a push. Well, if the big man jumped off himself, yeah, Jerry, there'd be no issues, I guess, with that, because he's free to do that if he wants to, like he cares enough about human life and he doesn't, want to necessarily live with the guilt that he could have prevented the 5 deaths. I don't know, but that's totally a different case. That's not the same as an act of pushing, because pushing is something you have no right to do to someone else. But jumping off a bridge, I mean, you do have the right to do that, even though you shouldn't do it, right? It's not a good idea. So anyway, then, that's the reason it's wrong. But let's go back to the other trolley cases, not man on the bridge, but Luke, bystander, or the original driver case. In those cases, what is the way of diverting the threat from 5 to 1? So in all other examples, aside from this one, what physical action causes the trolley to threaten 1 instead of 5? What puts the one person in harm's way in all the other trolley cases? It's not pushing a person, but it's doing what instead? It's hitting a switch, right? Just hitting a switch. Now, just by itself, the action of touching a lever is not the violation of an important right. But of course, by itself, the act of pushing someone is an act that violates the important right of the person to not be pushed or to have anyone lay their hands on him without their will and consent. So her final result here, or analysis, is that it's okay to divert threats from a bigger to smaller group, but the method by which the diversion occurs cannot itself constitute the violation of an important right. So if you must push someone in order to shift the threat to them, that's not okay. But if all you have to do is touch a remote switch or something, then that is an acceptable means of diverting threat. At least this is how she argues, and she thinks that's why people have these moral reactions to the different cases. So according to her analysis, it makes sense that people think this is wrong because it's an unacceptable means of diverting the same threat. And according to her analysis, it makes sense why people think that transplant is wrong because it's not diverting the same threat. So anyway, that's the kind of result there that we get to at the end of the paper. Yeah, what was I going to say? I was thinking about. Well, let me continue. I have a few more notes on this. Something that I just had in my mind, but I kind of lost the train of thought. So yeah, she also adds this at the very end. She says, well, what constitutes an important right? Oh yeah, here it is. I have the idea now. I got it back. So let me make another example that's parallel to Man on the Bridge, but it's much more realistic and I think relatable. One thing that is, for better or worse, an author like Thompson feels, free to give some of the most highly creative and unrealistic thought experiments just to kind of give us examples to pair with her arguments. And that's not a problem at all for, a person that's a fan of philosophy or a trained philosopher like me. That's almost fun and interesting. But for some, you could almost think it's getting far off the, relevance to reality or something that I can actually imagine happening. So here I'll give you one that maybe is a little more relatable. Let's take a military type scenario. Say a grenade is lobbed down into this bunker and there's 6 soldiers in the bunker. So some enemy force tosses a live grenade in there. Now, since there's 6 people in the bunker and this is a live grenade, all 6 of them are threatened by the grenade and their lives are threatened by that grenade. If it detonates, it'll kill them all. Suppose that, I don't know, this is such a structure of bunker that it's not possible to just toss the grenade back up out of it or whatever. So it looks like 6 people are definitely at risk of death by grenade. What is an action that could be taken by one of the soldiers, which would cause the same grenade that threatens 6 right now to only threaten the life of one of the 6? How could we shift the threat of that grenade from 6 to 1 if you can imagine like a scene like this. I'm sure maybe real scenes like this have played out. In movies, I've seen a couple of cases where something like that happens. Is there something like in Captain America or whatever? Yeah, so suppose someone jumps onto and throws himself on the grenade. Now, would that be morally acceptable? Sure, because it's kind of like your example earlier, Jerry, when you said, what if the guy jumped off himself? Well, this would be equivalent to that. Suppose that someone does jump on top of that grenade, and they blunt the destructive impact of the detonation so that it just kills the one and not all six. Now that, I guess, would be permissible, at least according to the solution advanced by Thompson, because what's the threat to six? Grenade. What would be the threat to one if this noble act of self-sacrifice, I guess you could maybe call it, is taken? Well, in that case, the same grenade instead just threatens that one who's tossed themselves onto it. So it's conversion of the same threat from 6 to 1 by means that are not a violation of anyone's rights, because you're at liberty, I guess, to volunteer for such an act. But, and there you go, Brandon, you're already ahead of the game. I was just about to ask that. So what would be an unacceptable way, an immoral way of diverting the threat from 6 to 1 in the same example? Well, it would be immoral to push someone onto the grenade. So suppose that's the case instead. Grenade comes in, oh my God, we're all gonna get blown up. No, I'm sorry, you gotta hold them down, stay on that grenade, it can't be blown up. So look, that is a way of causing the grenade, which is the same threat, to only face one, but it's not an acceptable means of diverting the threat because it involves an assault against the person's will, as opposed to the prior case in which it was a voluntary act of sacrifice. So, Kobe, your question, is the violation of rights going to be someone else forcing another soldier to jump on the grenade? Right, well, they wouldn't jump, they'd be pinned. But yes, that's the point. And so I'm giving you this as an alternative example to man on the bridge, right? The equivalent of pushing someone onto the grenade is pushing the guy into the way of the trolley. And if your intuition is that's wrong, even though it's an attempt to prevent the larger loss of life, then you share the intuition of most people and the intuition of Thompson, which is that it's no problem to divert threats from more to fewer people, but it also matters how you divert the threat. So if you have an available action that diverts the threat, which doesn't constitute the violation of an important right, then it would be okay to do that. It's like steering the tail fin of the plane towards the less populated field, or flipping a switch, which simply redirects the course of the trolley to a less populated track. But it's not okay to like lay hands on people, assault people, do things that violate important rights in an effort to divert threats from bigger to smaller groups. Janice, if you got the okay to push someone onto the ground, they ask you to push them, that'd be permissible? Well, it'd be a funny thing to do. I mean, why do you need to give people permission? You would just lay on it at that point. I mean, is the person catatonic and they're like, I can't make myself do it, please push me? I mean, I guess I can sort of imagine that. It would be a fraught moment, of course. But no, that I guess would not be morally impermissible, because granting the person permission to push no longer makes it assault, right? It's just like sexual intercourse. I mean, that is assault unless it's permitted, but if it's permitted, it's a consented to act that involves, touching, etc., of another body. So laying hands on someone without their permission is a violation of important rights, yes. Kobe, also they wouldn't have too much time to react and give someone permission. Yeah, it'd be a tough rapid fire scenario. Okay, here's a grenade. You, sir, please, I grant you this green light to now shove me on top of the grenade. So go ahead, do as you will, because I can't bring myself to do it. It's a funny variation on the case, but it doesn't really change their ultimate assessment of what makes it right or wrong to do that. So that's okay. Yeah, so like the only last leftover little item that she kind of plays around with is, what is the scope of the concept of important rights? Because she says it's not okay to divert threat if the way of doing it violates an important right. But she leaves open-ended what the specification of important rights are. She feels like we can all agree that assault, pushing someone is not, that is a violation of an important right. But she doesn't want to go further into detail about what the other important rights are, such that doing things that would break those rights would be not acceptable means of diverting a threat. And she says it's kind of up to the judgment of the individual as to what the scope of important rights are. But as long as we agree that it's wrong to violate important rights, then she thinks it's okay to allow people their individual judgment as to what important rights constitute. So here's like another example given to try and play around with that a bit. How important is the right of not having a promise violated? Okay, so suppose that you're hanging out with the track workers earlier in the day, the people who work on the track, and you said to them, Cal State Fullerton, I'm a college student, and it's funny that you're a track worker, because I was taught this essay in philosophy class called The Trolley Problem. And they go into all these examples where track workers like you are going to be faced by an out of control trolley, and someone could switch it to where there's fewer people. And, we play with the idea of like, when would that be acceptable? Why not? And so suppose the track worker is like, oh yeah, we talk about the trolley problem too. It's a funny joke among us in the field. But I want to ask you something, sir, or ma'am, or whatever. I want you to promise me something right now, straight up. And they look at you and you're like, oh, that's okay. Okay, what is it? They say, okay, I want you to make me a serious promise. I want you to promise that if you were ever in the position of the bystander and you have the switch, and I was that one guy that's on the other trolley side or other trolley track, I want you to promise me something right now. Tell me this. Tell me that if you were that bystander and I was the one person, you would not flip the switch towards me and you would let it hit those 5. Can you promise me that? Because I want to know that I can rely on you to never hit the trolley switch so that it goes in my direction, even if I'm the one person up there. Will you promise me that? So suppose you're hearing the guy say it, and you're like, what a weird request. I mean, it's never going to happen. So sure, I mean, yeah, you got my word. I put it on everything. If I was the bystander or whoever, and it was you on that side, I would not switch it to you. So you have my word. Now suppose that later on that day, you can't believe it, but you look, the events are unfolding just as the case explains, and you are at the switch. And now you're thinking, damn it, I actually promised I wouldn't hit the switch earlier to that guy himself. So here's a question. Do you think that makes it wrong to hit the switch? Because you got to break a promise. So the violation of a promise is a breaking of an important enough right that makes it wrong now to divert? Thompson says, well, people will disagree. Some will say that it's so important, promise keeping, that makes it immoral to switch the switch. Other people would say that, well, promises, usually you should keep them, but now it's life and death. And, now you got to go and break the promise. So I don't know what you think that case dictates. And she sort of says this is a more gray area case where different members of the audience will split off. Some will say it's a promise, so now breaking it makes it wrong. Other people will say, well, 5 versus 1 human lives. Forget the promise. You got to break that promise now. I imagine the scenario, if I think about it mentally, it's almost humorous. You have a little bit of a dark sense of humor. Imagine that guy, you did flip the switch. He sees the trolley coming at him, and he's like, oh, I mean, come on. What? Didn't you just promise me? No. Boom. Just gets hit by the trolley. So you think the magnitude of the promise matters? Yeah, I mean, at that point you assume the one person now. Yeah, I guess that's also a fact. That brings it into like having some kind of prior relationship with the individual. Well, I don't know. Can I fix that, Sebastian, by editing the case? Suppose you're hanging out with all the track workers and you're just having fun lunch with them, and there's just the one guy that wanted the promise, but you also like the other people. So I don't know. We could say that the relationship is of equal status, but only one person had a promise involved. Brandon, it's by chance that you had that conversation with him. You could have made that promise with anyone, so you don't owe it specifically to him. Perhaps true. So my own view about that, very tough. I feel that promises are serious and that they are moral obligations, but my utilitarian side makes me think that the value of human life matters so much more than fidelity to a promise. So it's a tough one, that one. But I think that I would probably break in favor of breaking the promise. Maybe I don't think that the keeping of such a promise is quite as important as the right against not being assaulted, because I certainly think it's wrong to push the guy into the way of the trolley instead of hitting the switch. Another example that she gives is, what about property rights? What if you have to violate property rights to divert this trolley path? So suppose that when you get to the switch, you're the bystander, and it says this: private property, do not touch. Property of track worker number 1. So, and there's like a little short fence, which you could easily just step right over, flip the switch, but it says not allowed, not authorized, private property. But you know that it works, and you know that it would certainly function to divert the path of the trolley. Does violation of a property right constitute something so important that morally forbids you from preventing the 5 from getting hit? Some will say, yeah, property rights are absolute and very important. So if you have to trespass to hit the switch, that's not okay. But other people might say, I don't know, trespassing is bad, I guess, but the loss of human life is so much more grave and serious that here is a case where you're called on to disobey the property rights. Sebastian, you'd violate because obviously something fishy was happening. Fishy? What do you mean fishy, though? Like, which thing are you saying you would violate, the property rights or the promise? Well, anyway, maybe you'll be able to add further detail to that. But, no view of these side miscellaneous cases at the end kind of dominates. So, I mean, really the main thrust and point of the essay was complete once I got through Man on the Bridge, and I talked to you about the reason that shows the need for that second little amended clause. This additional discussion at the end is just kind of a little bit of free play where we try and consider how broad is the scope of so-called important rights. And she thinks that will help to give further detail as to when and in what cases an act of diverting threat is impermissible and wrong. So yeah, you know, with trolley problem and stuff, there's a lot of current day interest in it. I think I've said there's a lot of memes about it. There's the show Good Place that did like an episode on it. And as we move into the world of automated vehicles, it's not even that much of an abstract topic because maybe I've said before, and I think I did at the tail end of last meeting, but those who have to program automated vehicles, self-driving cars and stuff, which could become a staple in the future, those that have to program these devices and machines that drive automatically and without direction from a person, they have to be able to program them to make such decisions in the event that there's a critical scenario where you can't avoid hitting some number of people. And so if you're the programmer that says, here's the algorithm for the car, once it sees that there's a group here and a smaller group there, I'm going to tell it to swerve towards the smaller group. You there, the programmer, are equivalent to the bystander at the switch because you direct a vehicle that's controlled under its own power as to what to do in a critical emergency situation where there's this either or. So it's not entirely irrelevant to the circumstances of everyday life and policy. And diversion of threat is something that you have to actually rehearse and consider before such a scenario unfolds. It's not like you want to think for the first time about what morally your intuitions are when an emergency situation like this happens. So we kind of test our moral intuitions in the laboratory of the philosophical thought experiment. That's why these things have a point and a purpose, even if we can all agree that many elements of the examples themselves are far removed from everyday experiences. So Sebastian, you say the property rights is the one you'd violate because if people are being prepared to die, stuck to the tracks, something or someone on that property is messed up. Well, okay, yeah, Sebastian, I mean, you are thinking people are attached to the trolley, and so therefore the note on the trespassing, the posted sign or whatever is itself part of like a cover-up of dastardly intent because these people are like set up to be killed on a trolley. I don't know. Those might involve additional elements to the example that are not necessarily implied by the original case, but it's fair, I guess, to have that reaction for sure. That reminds me, age and state of life also matters. Yes, we're not given any kind of additional information. We're just told these are human beings. So you're supposed to just think of them as a generic human being. If we build in a lot of more information, like this guy's 100 years old and this is like a newborn baby up here, you know, then you might start thinking, well, 5 100-year-olds, they're already almost at the end of their life. Here's a baby with a full life ahead of it and no experience yet. That changes the equation and the calculation a little bit. But if we just hold it to be generic persons, right, then I think that's the method anyway that the author intended. And Jerry, maybe those property rights were there even before those people were put on the track. It's part of the area, right? Okay, I see you guys having that conversation. And if someone is old and that's closer to end of life, so I guess you're picking up on the same thought I had there, it makes more sense to hit them than the younger people if somebody has health risks before the same could apply. Then we get into kind of utilitarian considerations. But I will say this, a lot of people don't necessarily find favor with that reasoning either. Like, oh, well, when you're at the end of your life, you're more expendable than like a young, healthy person. You know, a lot of people would argue, like a Kantian would say, that a human is an absolute end in themselves. And so we should not consider them as how much utility is there yet to be gained by the remaining part of their life. That's treating them as though they're just a means to the attainment of pleasure, experience, and so on. But a human being is an ultimate end. Maybe a Kantian would push back in that way, but I understand your thought for sure. Well, anyway, guys, I think we've had a nice thorough discussion and we've covered all the points in this trolley problem essay top to bottom. So at this point, I think we're good to go. We have a few minutes of extra time, but that's fine. So I guess I'll let us end a bit early if that's okay with you. So just come prepared on Thursday to talk about the topics on the study guide. I would say look at it, go back to your notes, go to use the book, maybe review some of the older lectures. And if you have any questions about topics on the list, kind of flag them so that you can raise those questions on Thursday, and me and your other classmates will just all try to help each other to come up with the right information so we could be prepared for our exam next week. Okay, no, I don't. I'm not. Maybe expendable was the wrong word. Yeah, but it's true that perhaps once you've already experienced all the best things that life has to offer, given the finite lifespan of human beings, you might even yourself think that the greater good is served by a young person surviving if it was an either-or choice or something. But anyway, guys, thanks so much again. And keep in mind, I did say I finished your first essays. Those are graded. And I'll be replying to any email inquiry about grades over the next few days. So then have a good one, guys. And let me know that in the chat we're all right and there's no other questions on your mind or items to talk about. So let me know. I don't want to close before I see a few of you saying that we're good to go. Okay, perfect, guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate all your help. And yeah, we'll be in touch over the email the next couple days, and I'll see you in class on Thursday. Okay, then. So see you next time. Bye-bye, guys. Thanks.